first of all, thanks for doing this.
Anything for you. I love this, man.
And what I would love to do is sort of, I know your story, but I don't know that I've ever had this conversation with you. So I want to go all the way back to the beginning with you.
I'll answer anything till I don't.
Okay, right. And you have editorial privileges over anything that's so
I'm not going to say it if I care about it being disseminated.
Okay, perfect. What I would love to do is to kind of start with where you're from, and there's the hook of that brings us into music is the obvious one. So
sure.
Kind of born, raised, mom and dad did what, and kind of
started from Paris, where my father was a painter. Paris, Tennessee, he was a house painter. But 2 hours west of here, I've said that before. I'm actually from a little suburb where I've just bought some land I'm excited about. Cottage, not college, Cottage Grove. My whole family's from there. And to answer your question, I just did this a minute ago. My late uncle, Billy Pullman, and they called me Barty. My name's Bart, actually. It's Barty, come here. And I was 4, maybe 5 years old. So listen to this. Put a needle on a little scratchy phonograph and played me "That's When Your Heartaches Begin" by Elvis. And I've been around music ever since. Secret fun fact: you remember what Elvis's logo is?
The TCB, the
tattooed on my left shoulder. That's dedication. I won a lot of arguments over that. I was engaged at Graceland. I still listen to a lot of Elvis. But something happened to me, and you can have a moment in your life that changes it. And I have literally, as a child, and since my first job at 16, well, I worked for my father, but since my first job outside that, I've been around music.
Yeah. And so the early years, you got bit hard and early. And as you're kind of, as a player, as a listener, as a writer, all of it.
I played really crappy trumpet. My 2 brothers are amazing. We all played trumpet. We were poor. I don't know how they even afforded the trumpets. Imagine that, 3 trumpets in the house at the same time.
Yeah.
But you've all got to have mentors in life. And I'll fast forward. I got my first job. I couldn't work for my father. My brother ran that company till my father died. We painted and sandblasted. My hair was down to here. That's nasty business. Yeah. I had a real growth spurt after high school. Most people don't. I probably weighed 100 pounds, and so did the sand.
Yeah.
You had to carry it up a ladder, and one day we lit into each other. And I had a friend who was working on a local radio station. I thought, if he can do it, I can do it. And I walked down there, and they gave me a job. But in that, about that time, I met a guy who was the local rock guy, the local band. His band was Tennessee River Crook. His name was Jimmy Stewart. Not that Jimmy Stewart. And Jimmy became a pretty famous songwriter. Y'all know Toby Keith? Anybody ever hear a little less talk and a lot more action? I was peeling the label. That was my friend Jimmy, and he wrote Brotherly Love. And then I got to hang around him. But years later, which we can get to, when he came to Nashville, they let me into the club. I got in rooms because of Jimmy. I probably had no business being.
Yeah. So you jump ship from the family business. You get in the radio business. You got Elvis coursing through your veins, or certainly that got you going. So where does that carry you next?
Well, we'll go back to radio. So I love the music part, but I got married young, had to make a living, and news paid more. And I got into that and found out I loved it. I became the news director of that station.
And what year was this?
This would have been 78.
And you were young.
I started in radio in 73.
Okay, and you were like 16.
And so, and a lesson for everybody, I'm speaking at a commencement next week, and this is really true. I was terrible. My voice sounded like this. Our call letters were terrible. They were WTPR. We treat people right. Seriously. It got better as time went by. But I did the shifts nobody wanted to do. There was an AM station and an FM on the other side. Some weeks I'd work 50, 60 hours. I convinced my school when DJs couldn't work to let me go do radio during school hours. But I did the jobs nobody wanted to do. Sunday mornings, late at night, people didn't show up. Got better, studied it, and that was a real secret. I have no talent, really, except I'm the most persistent human being you will ever meet.
Which we're gonna cover.
Well, I'm
here as
determined,
we go.
and so I just worked a lot of those hours. As the news director, I was also you remember we had 2 newspapers. We've got the Tennessean here now. We had an afternoon paper called the Nashville Banner, which I miss. And they kind of let me be a stringer. And truth be told, I got promoted there when I shouldn't have, because everything I covered over in West Tennessee, the Tennessean didn't. And I'd get some scoops on the Tennessean. And they finally made me a correspondent, and I covered all of West Tennessee from Memphis to Paris. And our local state representative was running for governor. My grandfather had carried his mail with a horse and buggy. The place I just bought's right over there by his. The thing was Ned Ray McWhorter. And McWhorter.
Yeah.
And they had done a commercial here in Nashville that he hated. So our local state representative, a guy named Don Ridgway, if y'all know who Tim McGraw is, well, his producer is also from my town, Byron Gallup. He came and went, man, Ned hates this thing. Would y'all do one? So I wrote the script. Byron did the music. We stayed up all night. And I knew McCord. It wasn't like we didn't know each other. I covered it. And there was an event a day or two later. There was a fish fry, and he was campaigning in Henry County because he lived close by. And they played in the commercial. And he always called me Barto. That's how he talked. He said, Barto, I heard that commercial. And we run a commercial break. We'll be right back with more of this interview with candidate McWhorter. And he said, I'm going to be the next governor of Tennessee. Now, he was Speaker of the House at the time. So we call him Miss Speaker. Miss Speaker, I know you're going to be. And he goes, will you come to Nashville and work for me? Then we're back on there. And I thought, did he just say that? Finished. And sure enough, he had made that offer again. And the day he was sworn in, he called me and was up there the next day.
So this is where the intersection with politics starts, right? Because
well, I had covered a lot of it, especially for the banner. They wanted anything political from West Tennessee. I had an interest in it, but in terms of day-to-day, yes.
So I'm going to jump forward for a minute and give these guys some context, because this might be a hard line to draw from where we are. So I would consider you one of the best lobbyists ever.
Thank you.
At the federal level, you have influenced more public policy around the rights of songwriters. And
I'm going to go back. I hate that word.
Okay.
Lobbyist.
Sorry.
I run a trade guy.
You run a trade. I know.
I'm a registered lobbyist, but I wouldn't lobby maybe for the environment. I wouldn't do it for anybody else, but yeah.
Yeah. So
thank you for that. So, coming from you, Mark.
Well, I mean, I've watched you do what you do, and it's remarkable. So a lot of the impact of your work trickles down into the pockets of songwriters in the United States, and the trade association is not that well known.
Yeah.
If you don't really know it, it's out there. Its influence is quiet, unlike a lot of other, right? Fair?
And I think that's completely fair. In fact, it's a challenge. Now on the Hill, they probably know us better up there than they do in Nashville.
And I remember just a quick one flash into the timeline. I remember when Sopa Pippa was a thing. And this is when this was in the era of Napster, when there was, and you could elucidate this much better than me, just in terms of the complications of it. But you guys were working quietly. The regular crew is standing out in front of the congressman or the senator's door with their briefcase and their suit and tie, and you all are sneaking in the side door with a guitar and a bottle of bourbon. And
we didn't have the bourbon. That would have probably helped.
Yeah. But the idea that you figured out how to play the connection from the ear to the heart in a way that very few people sort of, I think, even
look,
understand.
we
and
had
heard.
no budget. We still don't.
Mhm.
But songs mattered. And I was trying to think of this last night, Mark. Somebody asked me. It's in the thousands of meetings I've done in DC.
Mhm.
And I've probably done 10 without a songwriter. We take a songwriter, we play songs in the offices. Now, as a backdrop, it's insane, Congress is. When I work there, you have to be one of the most informed people in the world, especially if you're the press guy. These aides are all your age. Your government is run by 21 to 30-year-olds. Really?
Mhm. Yep.
I'm always whispering in the congressman's ear, not that they don't know, but there's 75 votes that day. Which one's this one? What's our position? What are we going to do? And they love seeing us. Imagine the songwriters, I'll give them 10 minutes. Then the second appointment, give them an hour and we play and the whole staff comes in.
Yeah.
Maybe even a few times when they were hot nut to crack, I found out what song they played at their wedding. But it was the most, and still is, the greatest calling card anybody ever had.
Yeah.
I get a lot of credit, but truth be told, it's the songwriters.
Well, okay, so I want to back up because
Okay.
now you're here at this intersection of media in the radio, television, and now you've been called up into the politics of the state in Ned's administration.
Yes.
So talk about what you were doing there and how these.
Well, I was deputy director of communications. I was the press guy. And again, he'd been Speaker of the House. He'd been in the state legislature for 18 years.
And how old are you at this point? Because you're still pretty.
28 or 9.
Okay, so that's a pretty big
Yeah.
post for a pretty young
And
guy.
it was. And Speaker for 14 years.
Mhm.
And his staff had been with him the whole time. They didn't know who I was. And that was a little kerfuffle a time or two. Who's this guy? Because he chose me to be his traveling aide, which meant I went everywhere with he did. And I have a lot to learn, especially about how government works and all that. But I was from home, and I know he trusted me.
Mhm.
And I was completely loyal to him, to nobody else. He's the smartest man I've ever been in a room with. There's this kind of smart, but what do you do with it, especially politics? Ned, a whole lot of things you enjoy in this state was because of that governor.
Mhm.
And so I did press releases. We reported. We had 29, I think, cabinet offices and state agencies. I was over several of those. One of my favorite was the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. I got to do all the outdoor stuff,
Mhm.
but it was never the same on any given day. And I, for the first couple of years, traveled everywhere I went with them.
So you're in that kind of moment, and you're still now at that point. You moved to Nashville,
Yes.
right? So
The next day.
right.
In fact, I came up here and didn't have a place to live.
Mm-hmm. And so you land, you get sort of ensconced, and how do you reconnect into the where does the intersection back into the music community start?
Ned loved music. Now, nobody really, there were a couple departments, tourism and some other things that tended to work with it more. And I said, I'll do that, And Ned loved music. And so I made myself available whenever anything like that happened.
Right. So when there was this is before film and TV subsidies. This is way.
Dolly Parton and he did the first reading program in Tennessee. He was sitting in a historically black church in Upper East Tennessee. And some guy singing at the top of his lungs with his hymnal upside down. And everyone up and came, you can't read, can you? And that's where Dolly's whole book program started. So I just got around that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now you're there, and one of the things we talk about in here is the idea that you're stacking skills, right? So you start with the baselines, you add different skills, and then you reapply those skills into the next adventure.
And the best one there for me was twofold: the legislative process.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. You know what a King of the Hill rule amendment is? I didn't either. But you learn all this stuff because the legislature is next door to us.
Mm-hmm.
You learn people, but I learned a lot from him about a lot of DC is a town, and I'm fast forwarding, where 98% of the people make a lot of money by telling you what they're against and complaining about it. Ask them what they're for. And Ned taught me, first of all, when it's government, to get your support one person at a time. And don't introduce something if you don't have a chance of passing it. A lot of organizations do, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the skill set, was the understanding of the nuances of the legislative process and how to get something done.
Mm-hmm. So
And I could give you some great stories
yeah,
about that.
let's do one or two of those.
The very first budget we had was our second year. You kind of inherit the budget from the governor before. And we did a lot of our work at the residence right over here on Curtis Wood Lane.
Mm-hmm.
And this was not as divisive. It's not Democrats hating Republicans, although there were party lines. People tried to govern. So it's different now.
Mm-hmm.
But that first budget, he comes out there and the Democrats are all over here and the Republicans are all over there. I won't name names, but goes, what about my bridge program? What about this? And Ed goes, y'all turn to page 58. And there's a line item for several $1 million, unappropriated funds. And the Republican from Upper East Tennessee, well, what's that for? And he goes, that's for y'all to decide. But if every one of you and your whole caucuses don't vote for this budget, none of you get a damn penny. And they fought each other over that money. We got the only unanimous budget passed in Tennessee. But I watched that and I went,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
He just was brilliant. You want to hear my favorite story?
Please.
So in Upper East Tennessee is the Pigeon River. It's beautiful. Just this winding thing that comes from North Carolina down. Has anybody ever been around a paper mill?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, big.
It just burn your eyes. It's the most horrible thing ever. And most of the jobs in Upper East Tennessee, in that section of North Carolina, a lot in Upper East Tennessee were champion paper country,
Mm-hmm.
North Carolina. It was 8 or 9 miles up the river. But before that, it looked like the Colorado Smoky Mountain range. I'm conflating. The Smoky Mountains, Colorado, it looked like some pristine, wonderful nature scene. Right past the plant, you couldn't even go down. You couldn't breathe. It was black, the water. Mm-hmm. Even down in Tennessee, 8 or 9 miles later, there's no vegetation up on the side and fish are floating on top of the water. Birds are dead. You have to go several miles into the state before it even gets realistically clean. So again, I'm the traveling aide and I'm from his hometown. So one Friday afternoon, every important person in Tennessee government starts calling me, where's the governor? I'm like, I don't know. Bart, where is he? I don't know. Saturday, there was a panic. Where is the governor? I said, swear to God, I don't know. Now, there was a lady in West Tennessee that ran his businesses there. I wasn't afraid of any of them. I was talking about this the other day, and it was Madeline Pritchett. If you're still around Madeline, if you got a call from Madeline, you heard your ass was grass and she was the lawnmower. Madeline calls, goes, Bart, where is he? I said, I don't know, Madeline. She goes, Bart. I said, Miss Madeline, I don't know. Okay. Well, about mid Sunday afternoon, he comes dragging in with a guy named Billy Stair. And they called him the governor's brain, one of the smartest people I've ever known. He was this policy guy. Yeah. He didn't need a computer because he had one up here, and a state trooper. And they looked like they've just gotten through a wilderness adventure, barely survived. So don't ask me any questions. Nobody did. Everybody's like, wait, Ned goes, don't ask me. And everybody adjourns. Well, the next Monday morning, the governor of North Carolina is, I think his name was, forget his name, Riley maybe. Anyhow, he's there. There's, at the governor's residence, there's this big hallway, and then there's a kitchen with a table in it right here. Well, I just happen to be standing here where I can see in that room and see all the way down the hall longer than this. What was his name? That's going to drive me crazy. Anyhow.
It's a senior moment.
It is.
They're closer
But
and closer together these
There's
days.
a box sitting down there. Thought, well, but they don't want this here. Somebody's forgot a box. And I reached down and Ned goes, Barto. All right. So Riley and his team comes in. Have y'all ever seen the movie A Few Good Men? You know where he makes him say, I blank blank ordered the code red.
Mhm.
Ned just strings him along and they keep going on. We're going to call him Dick, I think was his name.
Dick Riley.
Something like that. And he said, you got to do this. And the EPA had ordered it. They ordered him to clean it up. He goes, sue me. And I think they'd sue him. We don't have any money. And it was going to be a multi-million, if not billion-dollar project. So they go back and forth. And finally, Riley says, it's not that dirty. Ned goes, it's filthy. It's not that dirty. It's filthy. Ned, I drink out of it. He reaches down to that box. And all of a sudden, another press aid comes out. And there's a big picture blown up bigger than that with Ned in a raft with Billy staring at state trooper. And there's several of these pictures where they put in illegally in North Carolina. Water's pristine, and there's a jar of water. He goes, that's 1 mile before you get to the plant here. Where the plant is, it looks like a can of oil. This is right outside the plant and all the way down in Tennessee. He goes, I won't be cruel. About 4 miles into Tennessee, he said, drink it. Now, side story. In the Jimmy Carter campaign, he and Sam Donaldson, a famous reporter for ABC News in 2020, had butted heads, but through it became great friends. And I'd looked down just a second before, and there's a bathroom, and over here is a little tiny governor's office, his working office. And some guy with the camera and Sam Donaldson run across there. And maybe I puffed a joint once in 7th grade. I thought I was having flashbacks. I'm like, what is this? Well, pulls the thing down, sets it down. Donaldson comes running up, and he gets up and leaves. They put it on the news, and guess what happened? They had to clean up the Pigeon River. That was Ned Rainford.
Yeah. And
I got to see all that. And I'll sit times and think, I'll go, what would Ned do?
So
hell of a story.
Hell of a story. So you that's a political master.
It just, and a people master.
Yeah.
And he, you know, the thing that carried him too in a lesson, he only did it when he was right. And it was for the betterment of the state. It was never over a political fight, Mark. It was something he believed in his soul that would make the lives of Tennesseans better. Ned was very wealthy. He didn't need anything out of this. And he picked, so I guess I'm saying he was very judicious in those moments, like the budget, the Pigeon River, but he never lost one of those.
And so in kind of that mixture of, you've got this passion for music and you've learned the people and the systems, you fall out of that era, or you're moving into your next era. What's your next move in that process?
I was there about 2 years, and the governor's press office is down in the basement, and a newly elected U.S. congressman from Nashville named Bob Clement walks in. He'd barely been in office. And I'd met the Clement family before, and he kind of looked like, I said, Bart Herbison. He goes, Bart. He goes, I got this press event. And for some reason, I don't know if his press secretary left or what. And he goes, I need some help. I said, fine. So we wrote some stuff, made some calls, and I went to the event with him. About a day or two later, he offered me the job. And I had no ability to negotiate. I said, I'll do it on one condition. I get the music issues. The press person didn't take an issues portfolio. I got the music issues. Now, you ready for the other life-changing moment? My very first meeting on my first day, I had never been to Washington. I took a job into a town. I got there the night before. I didn't realize it cost four times to live there. Well, I went for it.
Yeah.
My very first meeting was with the Nashville Songwriters Association. A guy named Peter McCann, who was a publisher, and a great songwriter named, that was Peter, and a publisher named Kevin Leonard. It had to be the worst meeting they ever had, because all I could do is like, y'all do what? Somebody represents songwriters? And I said a prayer that day I was brand new. I wasn't ready to leave. Let that be my next job. Let it be my last job. 29 years ago, that came true.
Yeah. And so how long were you with Bob?
10 years.
And so during that time, you had the music issues. So one of the things that I find interesting about when you look at kind of if you look at the 100-year lifespan of music as a commercial enterprise, right? You see the industry get bigger, and then you see a technological innovation, and then the business shrinks, and they resist, and then they finally get on board, and then it gets bigger, and then same thing. And it's been going on for 100 years. So in that kind of resistance, and that you're watching this trend line of music over a long period of time inside the political machine, not representing songwriters. Where was music in that period of time in terms of its trajectory?
Well, I would say, I want to first comment on it gets bigger. It gets more corporate. There's more money in it.
Well, I mean,
money. More money. And well, some of the issues then, a lot of them were songwriter issues and some artist issues. Can I digress for a minute?
Yeah, please.
So, is anybody in here a songwriter?
Lots of them.
Do you plan on making that your profession? I'm asking, do you? Okay. That might be a smart move, or at least have a backup. Stay with me for a minute. I'm going to get in the weeds. In 1906, Edison records sound. Wax cylinder, Mary had a little lamb. And we have no copyright law to cover that. We had a sort of Queen Anne version of cobbled together English law. And there was nothing to cover it. So America's first Copyright Act was written, much of which we're still under. And three terrible things happened to songwriters in that law. Record labels, our friends at the record labels, negotiate in a free market. They set their prices. They do whatever they want to do. The government sets the songwriter royalties. How's that going to work for you? It never has. There's two kinds of songwriter royalties, and they existed then. One's a mechanical royalty, named after mechanical player piano rolls at the time. Another's a performance royalty. I'm going to talk about the mechanical, because that's what was the issue. And it was for physical products, the wax cylinders.
Yep.
And we just weren't represented. Now, I don't find any history on this, congressional record or anything else, but through the ages, I'm told the only songwriter that showed up was John Philip Sousa, that guy, and wasn't greeted very well. And the second rule we were under is for the mechanical royalty. You will only pay that songwriter so little that the purchaser of a mechanical player piano roll won't notice price increase. But these cylinders are some $3, $4, $5, $6. You got a penny divided among all the writers on the song and all the publishers. And it took 69 years to get that up to 2 pennies. And then the most evil thing of all, it's compulsory. You're under a compulsory license. The only time a songwriter or their representatives can decide who records it is the first time. And once it's released, and used to, when I came at the apex of the music industry, 40-something record companies, now there's 5. You'd get a record deal in a week here. I'm not kidding, if you had talent. But then you go, I don't know if I want to let that new artist record it. I might wait for so-and-so to record it. Now you beg anybody to record. But it was a compulsory license. We're still under 2 of those rules. Now there's more things that changed, but some of that was going on. Record labels, there was something called the Fairness in Music Licensing Act, which was the most unfair thing ever, very end in my career, because bars and restaurants didn't want to pay for broadcast music, and they won. 98% of American restaurants, if you hear radios playing, we don't get a penny for that, and it's just wrong. Got out lobbied by the National Restaurant Association. trying to think of some other issues. They were always about payment, mostly for songwriters versus record labels. So, and that's why I already love songwriters, but that's where I really cut my teeth on songwriter issues. NSAI is coming to see me, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and other groups.
So you're there with him. You're in the political process again. You say that little prayer, and 10 years later, you end up in the chair that you've been in for 29 years. So I'm going to back up again for a minute.
Sure.
So you built a family, you built a life, you have other things, but your focus really for the last 30 years has been advocating for the rights of songwriters in the United States. And as a trade organization, there really isn't anything else like you specifically.
Well, there are groups. The performing rights societies are mostly focused on the performance right. Music publishers more on the mechanical right. Doesn't happen often, but sometimes our job is Sweden to talk to both sides and say this is good for everybody. But yeah, we are unique in that regard.
And so you also fight that good fight, to your point, with no budget. Right?
Well, we've got a budget, much better than we used to, but my entire annual budget is 1 hour of earnings for ChatGPT. If that gives you a point of reference.
Okay, so you take the helm 30 years ago, and what's the first problem that you encounter?
And I would say this with respect to everybody that hired me, we were bankrupt. My very first act, before I took a couple weeks off, which I'd never done, had the financials sent to a little condo in Florida, FedEx down there. I looked at them. I went back to town a couple of days later and borrowed money to make a payroll. And I looked at the budget, and I don't care what not-for-profit you run, that's the biggest challenge. And there was this program, this service, and I went in and I go, we're sorry, you're going to quit? I said, no, I'm not going to quit. In fact, I won't even take a salary at the end of the year. We're going to solve this. But this is gone, this is gone, this is gone. And a couple of people started to speak up, and I said, open your mouth and I'm leaving. And I wasn't trying to be that. I wanted to set a tone because people had pet projects that were losing lots of money. And
this was at the board level, right? In other words, so as the executive director, the dynamic there is,
I report to a board of 27 songwriters.
Which sounds like no offense, potentially kind of a clown car waiting to happen.
But now this board I've got is very sophisticated in this regard and very supportive and chosen carefully. Because before we elect them, I sit down with everyone and say, here's what you're getting into and here's what you got to know. And for a songwriter these days, their biggest commodity is their time. And they are very generous with that. But I'm also understanding not to ask too much and be circumspect in what we ask people to do.
So you in a way inherited someone else's budget, which didn't sound like it was doing it very well, and someone else's board that you didn't help select, right? And so you end up in the chair. In a way, you ran into a burning building you didn't really know was on fire till you got in.
But that was great. I'm going to tell you why. Because I ended up playing my role, and they ended up playing their role, which was to set policy and support the work of the implementation of it. And they let me run the staff. I hire and fire everybody. I set their salaries. They set mine. And it's the way it should be in a functional ecosystem.
Right. In other words, when it's functioning well, the board and the leadership.
I'm not a songwriter. They are. There's checks and balances. And I've learned pretty well, with just a couple of exceptions over all these years, when to go to them. And we've got a subset. We've got an executive committee, because if we're in DC on something, I got to make a spur of the moment decision. If it's even more focused, we've got a 4-person president, vice president, past president, legislative chair, and I check with them. But we each understand and play our roles, and very effectively, I think. So
okay, so you take over at that point, and what once you were in the chair and kind of got through the really it's a couple of years before you get settled.
It was a couple of years, and to answer what I think you meant by the question in the first place, I said, we've got to find an issue and we got to win it. If we can do something to better this profession, we can. And I went around selling myself and what we intended to do. We had to do something. Ready to get in the weeds again?
Yes.
You want to hear a crazy story? So we're in a little meeting. I've been there a few months, and a songwriter named Billy Kirsch, Holes in the Floor of Heaven, is talking to another woman named Becky Foster and goes, I'm going to sell my song catalog. And for your songwriters, that's a group of songs. It may be one catalog in your life. It may be 3 or 4. And they're usually income producing songs. Nobody's going to want to buy. Well, I wish I could get the lower rate that the publishers have. I'm going to sell a catalog. I went, what? So it took a few months to do research what he was talking about. And that wasn't exactly right. And you want to see how sausage gets made in DC? So I'm going to get real in the weeds. Stay with me. You are already paying income tax plus FICA, Medicare, Social Security every quarter or every year when you have songs. There's a rate called the capital gains tax rate when you sell a business. And we had it. It's 1951. Dwight Eisenhower's running for president. He writes a series of memoirs, 3 books called Crusade in Europe, Volume 1, 2, and 3. And book authors were also eligible for capital gains. He'd already sold one in 1949 because he's a citizen soldier. He needs to fund the campaign. Nobody paid attention to that. But it's 1951. Adlai Stevenson's running against him. He's going to win. But he makes a mistake in an interview and said, somebody asked me about funding the campaign. I'm going to sell another one of these books and put it in my campaign. The capital gains rate then, they called it something different. They called it the business creation rate or something. It was in the teens, like let's call it 18%. I don't remember right offhand. The upper income tax rate was 92%. That didn't change till Reagan. 92%. And it was almost 70s and 80s if you made a lot of money. I mean, just saying. That's why a lot of corporate tax shelters evolved. So the Democrats hear this. They control the House, the Senate, and the presidency. So in June of 1951, they introduce a bill that says book authors may not claim capital gains on self-created works. In other words, Eisenhower's going to pay 92%. Yeah. There's nothing they can do about it. It's going to pass. And it did. However, in the few days between introduction and passage, the Republicans come to the Democrats and say, we're going to help you. What? Wait a minute. You're going to help us screw your standard bearer, Dwight Eisenhower, over. We've got 3 conditions. You're doing it for book authors. We also wanted to apply to songwriters, painters, and inventors. Why? Are you now or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? It was Joe McCarthy, blacklist politics, and the hearings are going on. And for songwriters in particular, Ira Gershwin, one of those Gershwins, and a guy named George Kaufman are on both coasts getting actors and songwriters together. Groucho Marx is the music publisher, the comedian, the Marx Brothers. And most of his writers write for film and TV. And this didn't help. Almost precisely at the moment, they write the score for a movie, The Swarthy, little Joe McCarthy, and have him in a Hitler outfit. Songwriters are on the list. Painters, I later learned, was because of Salvador Dali. He was a member of the Communist Party and preaching it. Nobody to this day has ever told me why inventors got put in there. And so come January 1 of 1952, they are paying income tax all over again. So when I hear this, we spend the next almost 2 years getting ready for it. I prepare all the materials and everything, and I call some congressional friends, say, I want to come see you, look at this. It's about 5 pages long. They put it down. They said, you got to have a sentence. And we said, it's double taxation. And we worked on it for 7.5 years, mainly because there was only one tax bill that came up during that time. And in 2006, we passed the Songwriters Capital Gains Tax Equity Act. It restored capital gains treatment for songwriters. The rate was 15 cents then. So this amount is about 20 now. If you sell a catalog today for about $5 million, we've made you $1 million. That put us on the map. And if you think changing copyright laws are, deal with the tax group.
Yeah.
And there's more to it than that, but that's essentially the story. And later on, inventors got it. Later on, that got repealed, but I don't represent inventors. I represent songwriters. And there's one more thing I said about songwriters. Why shouldn't every occupation get it? I said, that's up to you. But if you would do one thing, I'll never come see you, we'll drop the request. It's really two things. Put us in the free market and make it where we can average our income over 10 or 15 years. Because when a songwriter has a big lick, there's $1 million that year and 70 grand the next. Book authors, everybody else by contract can average it. So we made that case too, because I know if every profession wanted it, we weren't going to get it, and we got it, and we're 20 years into it now. And with the trials and tribulations of songwriters these days, that catalog value, and I'm not going to claim credit for the explosion in catalog values, but I will tell you this, and you know this, everybody started going, what are these really worth? Song catalogs are commerced in multiples. So you take the amount of income that you make, you look at the genres, and you look at the longevity. Shania Twain's got one of the richest catalogs ever because she's played on every radio format, country, pop, adult, contemporary. And her songs have lasted the test of time. But here's what you need to know. If you're a songwriter, you get those royalties 70 years after you die. So you only really would sell a song catalog because they're giving you 4 years worth of earnings. You sell it if you're desperate. And now it's more of an investment, and catalogs have gone through the roof, as they should. So a little bit in the weeds, but that's what put us on the map. The day that passed, every trade group partnered. We did that by ourselves. Nobody helped us. And it was, we did something more. Not only that, every songwriter appeared at the doorstep. That's the most important moment in our nearly 60-year history.
And that, to your point, when that sort of puts you, when people recognized the force that this small group had created, how did that change not only how you've been perceived right from that point forward, but your ability to maneuver?
Real simple answer. We were at the table. Every time groups got together in the industry to make decisions, and eventually, I would say we were one of the leaders at that table.
And so who sits around that table when you think about?
You think of how music's commerce, the performing rights societies, as they should, National Music Publishers Association, the Recording Industry Association of America, the Grammys, and probably a dozen others. So it's the people that, the most powerful ones deal with the income of their constituents, the labels, the artists, the writers. I don't necessarily mean it flows through them, but they represent those issues. And so that's who's at the table, but there's a lot of others these days. And that's at our table. Now, there's another table with broadcasters, bars and restaurants, digital companies, internet service providers, and depends on the issue, really.
And do those tables collaborate? Do they compete? Do they?
Yes and no. It depends.
Right.
Sometimes we do, but the government rate setting processes often, we're in a copyright royalty board trial with us and the national music publishers versus Apple, Amazon, Pandora, Spotify, Google, and Tidal. But it depends. We have also the Music Modernization Act. Everybody supported it. Everybody. Streaming companies, digital service providers. The streaming companies came to the table because they were getting sued out of business. 35 billion, 300, and they're losing every one of these suits. Spotify eventually wanted to go public, and that was awfully hard to do till you got that certainty. And we took some criticism for this. But we agreed, we and a few other groups, no lawsuits if you do this, 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 and this. And part of it was to create the new mechanical licensing collective.
Okay, so I
We'll
want
talk about
to,
that in a little bit.
I want you to break that down because you just, that was a mouthful of policy and impact.
Yeah.
So can you break that apart?
So the Music Modernization Act.
Yeah, that group around the table negotiating over.
Well, I'll back up a little bit. I'll give you the moderately long version of it, not the short or long, because it's hard to explain any of this stuff in a soundbite. There was a guy from Virginia named Bob Goodlatte. He became chairman of the Judiciary Committee, where all of our stuff is. That's a tough one. That's the most political committee on the Hill. The email servers, impeach Trump, Benghazi. I mean, that's what they do. I think that we're a relief to them too. We come in and play. It's the only thing they've ever agreed on in modern times. Music Modernization Act was unanimous through those committees. Remember, there's two royalties, performing rights societies, and they do this collectively. If I'm Spotify, if I'm broadcasters, I go to those PROs, I get a license, and I'm covered for a 3, 4, 5 year period of time, and I can't be sued. And between the three of them, I've got 30, 40 million songs. I pay ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. They pay the writers. It's very efficient. Is it perfect? We can argue that, what they do, but it's the best ever been invented. But there's nothing for your mechanical royalty. Now, remember I said it was for physical products? It was a little higher rate because you got to play the song as many times as you want to. If That's When Your Heartaches Begin by Elvis, I had a record, I could play it 500 times till the wax wouldn't gave out. So in modern times, this was partly agreement, partly the way it just evolved, but it was codified in the Music Modernization Act. If you listen to Pandora Radio, you don't control that playlist. Very limited. You only get the performance royalty if you're a songwriter. What they call interactive streaming, where you control your playlist and you can listen to the song over and over as many times as you want to, we get both royalties. We get a mechanical and a performance. So Goodlatte announces the Great American Copyright Act. And he says, I want every organization to introduce whatever bill they want. And we'll go with the one that has the most traction, suction. And there were probably, I don't even remember how many, a lot, dozen, maybe more pieces of separate legislation introduced. Our original one that led to the MLC was called the Songwriter Equity Act, which imagined a collective licensing arm or arms for that mechanical royalty. And there were a couple other things that made its way in there, but look, you got to get agreement. And our biggest challenge is we got the streaming services to agree to that. We won't sue you, but we're going to create a new agency and you got to pay for it. And you've got to change that number too. The songwriter gets paid so little. That became in modern times when we go to rate trials for this, and we're in one right now, we were not allowed to show the few deals the private marketplace. I believe in the marketplace. There's one place, songwriters, where you negotiate in the marketplace for sync. When your song's embedded in a visual medium, mainly film or TV, for over 100 years, since Talking Pictures. Now that market says it's a 50-50 split. I would say 99-1, but that's what the market says, and that's fine. And that was part of our goal in this. So now we get to introduce, and we're in this proceeding, could be the first time ever, what market deals say. So those were the big changes, but I'm being a little verbose now. We create something called the Mechanical Licensing Collective. It's right down here in the Gulch.
They've been to it.
Streaming services pay 100% of that cost. It's about 38, 40 million each year now. We negotiate with them over the price. We've always agreed. If we don't, we go to the Copyright Royalty Board and they set it. Every other collection agency in the world takes a piece of your dollar to get you your dollar. I'm hoping this becomes a template where the users and the distributors of music pay the cost for you. but that's what we did. That's what there were other parts of the Music Modernization Act. They fixed a thing where artists in the 70s didn't get paid. And there were a few other things. ASCAP and BMI had the same judge for life, which was ridiculous. And now they spin a wheel like any other trial. You go to a federal court trial for done some mafia type stuff. The judge is randomly selected, so are ours now. But the big piece was the MLC.
And the MLC's impact, when I think about kind of that deal, talk about that impact. Talk about
I'll talk about two kinds of impact. The first is stuff you'd never recognize. We're on the board. We're on every committee. That's not true in a lot of collection agencies, and mechanicals are usually private companies. It's the most transparent thing ever. You can see the entire database. There's a new songwriter portal where you can see all your stuff and see whether your splits are right. What's your name? Well, who's the songwriter? Are you a songwriter? What's your name?
Alvin.
Alvin what?
Diaz.
Diaz. They spelled it D-I-A-S. It's the Z, right? But somebody put it in there as an S. You're not getting paid. Now it's easy for you to go look at it, request a change, and if you're your own administrator, you change it. So being on all the committees, being on the board, that kind of transparency and them paying for it was huge.
Mm-hmm.
But it also saves you a lot of money. I mean, that now the streaming services pay for it. I don't know if that answered your question,
does,
but those are the highlights.
It does.
So.
Okay, so I want to pause because.
And by the way, the streaming services may complain about the budget, but let me make this point, which I've made over and over, and it's resounding and it's irrefutable. Let's take Apple, Amazon, Pandora, Spotify, and Google, the large five, and Tidal, the six.
Yeah.
They split, along with other smaller companies, that $40 million. So $5 or $6 million a year. I don't know what they were paying before. It was probably close to 40 million for each company.
Mm-hmm.
So they won on that too.
Yeah.
They don't get sued, and it's cheaper per company because they aggregate the budget.
Mm-hmm. So just as a pause, because you put a lot into the water. What questions do people have?
Are you all working right now?
Well, everything AI, which I assume
We're gonna get there. We're gonna
but
learn. That's why I wear the shirt.
AI. There are in legislation, that's pretty much it right now. But we do have this next copyright royalty board proceeding that started. I hope we can settle some of this. I hope we don't have to go to a trial because it's super expensive. But I'll tell you two of the issues important to us besides the rates. I'm not going to give you the whole backstory because it'd take forever, but we won the largest increase in history 2 trials ago, 44%, which of not much was not much.
Yeah.
But as streaming companies raise their prices and as it grows globally, because it's mostly American music,
Mm-hmm.
it started to really be impactful on statements. Down the road, if streaming grows anything like it has, and I predict they're all going to raise their prices. Who's a big eater? I went to Taco Bell one day and spent about $16. My order's 3 Taco Supremes with onions and tomatoes, which are extra, and a Mexican pizza and a Coke. It's like $16. And I thought, we're paying $9.99 for every song ever recorded. And you've seen Apple and Spotify raise their price. I predict that in the not too distant future, it'll probably be $19.99 a month. And you're going to pay it, aren't you? That's what one album used to cost us.
Yes.
Or a CD.
Yeah.
So so we won that, but they appealed it. And it drug on for 12 years. Then they came up with this bundling scheme. Stay with me. Spotify had a $9.99 a month music plan. And we went to a trial and we got an increase. Overnight, they decide to do this hocus pocus and play the system. They had 44 million customers that paid $9.99 a month for music. It disappears. Without your permission, they eliminate it. They bundle it with audiobooks, and there's not many audiobooks they offer. Raise the price $1 without your permission and say, oh, we've got to split the money with audiobooks. Since royalties take so long to catch up, that's been, I lose track of time, 4 years ago, maybe a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost somewhere between $600-700 million and $1 billion. So one of the things in this trial, there's no more of this bundling BS. Not something configurable that we don't get the court's approval on.
So let me ask you a question.
Now, there were bundles before,
Right.
Amazon and others, and we were glad to pay it, but we also got a part of the Prime membership. But what's the question?
Well, the question is the idea that when you look at the shareholders, when you look at the cap tables of those streaming services, you find the record companies participating on the other side. So and maybe I'm
they've sold their share.
They're out now again. Okay, but they were in.
They were, and
right?
That's something I think that should be disclosed too. If they're going to do it, be transparent about it. And when they sell them, the artists start to get a share.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with music publishers or anybody. The corporation buys part of the company, the empire,
Mm-hmm.
needs to be disclosed. And if they sell it, they've got to figure out an equitable way to divide that dollar.
So I'll go back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the idea that as the business has gotten bigger financially, that hasn't necessarily been reflective of the creator's role and impact in it.
I can only speak to the songwriter side. It has some. I don't know. Record labels, the artist makes their own deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I would assume it has a little bit, but corporations, particularly with stockholders, that's where they answer.
So when you look at,
I do want to say one thing.
okay,
Our relationship with the record labels is vastly different than it was when I first took over.
how so?
We're partners on a lot of things. We communicate. We're more transparent. And in some new private deals that have been made through these trials and other machinations, when we started the first trial for these royalties, record labels, because they can negotiate and own the piece of the service, got 1,700% more than the song. Depending on the service, it's 3 to 5 now, 300% more, 500%. In these new private deals, especially ones with AI, it's finally 50-50. Songwriters, publishers get the same, record labels get.
Okay. So would you say,
And that I give them credit.
is that progress in your mind?
A huge progress.
Yeah, okay.
Now, I hope that translates into other more standard business models, but I give them a lot of credit for that because they're going to answer to stockholders.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have to do that, but they did it. They did it voluntarily, and that went through a lot of discussions, preaching, threats. But look, it's definitely progress, Mark. 1,700% down to 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a jump.
Now, when you talk about so unpack private deals for me a little bit, and maybe now we can kind of wade into the AI water.
Okay, well, let me finish with
Yeah,
it on
okay.
AI. So, but let me answer his question. So one thing we want to do is address bundling. Out of the clear blue sky, after bundling, Spotify reaches out to Universal and Warner Chappell. It says, we're going to restore all that. What? They've done nothing out of the goodness of their heart.
Mm-hmm.
And if Spotify sees this, I'm optimistic. They've got new heads, 2 co-CEOs. Mm-hmm. Daniel Ek is gone.
Oh, yeah.
I once challenged him to a fight. We're
going to come back to this. Keep going.
And Martin Lorenzen, they're gone. There's a new day, a new leadership. And I can't tell you this much. They know they've got a PR problem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean they're going to voluntarily do it. We're talking, which is something we didn't do before.
Mm-hmm.
So kudos to that. Progress is incremental, but I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
So that the other issue is they made these private deals with a couple of companies. So if you wrote for Universal or Warner Chappell, you're noticing pretty hefty price increase. What about the other hundreds of publishers? What about you that publishes your own stuff? So we've agreed with NMPA that we want the next round of this to apply to everybody. So if we settle with these companies, I can only speak for NSAI, that'll be one of the conditions.
Mhm.
Everybody gets that restored rate, and they should.
What's when you talk about, when I hear the word trial, I think lawyers, I think budget,
It
I
is.
think lawsuit.
It's a royalty proceeding, but there's 3 federally appointed judges. And it's like a trial. There's witness testimony. Now, a lot of this testimony is in the weeds. It's a lot of economist stuff. It's a lot of comparable analysis globally about the value of music. But we testify in that trial. I've testified. Right now, we're working on who the songwriter witnesses will be. And I will tell you, in that Phono 3 trial, Liz Rose, that wrote the Taylor Swift stuff with Taylor, Lee Miller and Steve Bogard testified, and the judges can also ask questions. And they ask us things that technically I'm not sure we could have gotten into the trial. We had a couple of goals. The biggest one was to show you don't just write a song and you're a millionaire. Your fingers bleed for 30 years before you ever get something that pays you. It's hard, it's competitive. That's number one, that it's a job, and how little the songwriter got paid compared to the artist. And we got that in one way or another, and we won the largest rate increase in history. And I'm very convinced those 3 songwriters had a hell of a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and Steve is a force. I mean, all of them are a force.
And they were.
Yeah. And the other thing that I keep hearing, and you said it again, you said it earlier, you just don't give up, right?
Well,
Which
look,
is 7 years to get
my
one
wife
done.
congratulated us beyond a victory. I said, tomorrow, there's something else tomorrow. You have to be relentless in this. And I don't claim to be talented, the smartest person in the room, but I'm going to get up before they do, go to bed after, and we are never going to quit. Not on my watch. And I'm proud of that. I'm not bragging. You have to be relentless.
Mm-hmm. So,
and I tell this story. Why am I over here talking to you tonight? First of all, I love it. I love talking to the new generation. I love him. I do anything that he asked me to do within reason. But one of you may be deciding this stuff in the future. I'm serious about that. And you need to hear this now. Y'all are going to change AI. Y'all are going to be the ones to do it, not me. And that's important. And I do it. I spoke to USC today. I did another one. I did 3 classes today because I really believe that one of y'all are going to be in a position someday to help change this.
So let's wade into the AI water a little bit.
All right.
We talked when you and I were together last about what's going on there and the implications of it.
Okay.
And when you think about where this takes us, and just the when I wear this shirt, I get visceral reactions from, like, I had the barista that was giving me a cup of coffee this afternoon. Hey there, and it brings it out. Where do you see this in relation to?
Let me go backwards first, because I'm much more effective if I take a little over the past 3-year view. So for me, it started in 2022. I mean, AI had been around.
Yeah, machine learning's been around for a while.
Our president, Lee Miller, says, have you heard that song I texted you? I thought it was one of his. Y'all are way too young to remember a group from the 70s called Bread.
Well, I remember Bread.
If a picture paints 1,000 words, sing this to your
And why
girlfriend.
can't I
And why can't I paint you? Well, I turn it on and it's Paul McCartney singing the Bread song. And I tell Lee, I didn't know he did that. He goes, he didn't. Listen to it again. And I could tell it was choppy.
Yeah.
Y'all remember Fake Drake?
Yeah.
So that's about this time. So the next thing that happens, you see, this would have been, I may lose the year. It was either 23 or 24. I get a call from the Recording Industry Association of America, the record labels. I love working with them. Mitch Glazier, their CEO. And he says, we're going to do the first AI legislation anywhere on earth here in Tennessee. Tennessee is one of 3 states where your image and likeness is your property. And the other 47, you got right to privacy, right to publicity, which means you can't really do a damn thing about it. And that came about in 1983 because of Elvis Presley Enterprises. People were putting Elvis on shirts and Presley's name on hotels. And they said it's illegal. And what you do is go to a local court, a civil court, judge files an injunction. If you don't get Presley, you sell one more of those t-shirts, I'm fining you every day. And about the third day, guess what happens? You get in people's pocketbook, it goes away at almost 100% of the time. Now, what we did was add the word voice. We had image and likeness, we did not have voice. So Elvis stands for ensuring likeness, voice, and image security. We cleared up some jurisdictional things and it passed unanimously the next year. We had a little opposition, we worked it out. Phone carriers wanted not to be sued, just if you had it on your phone. We said, okay. Motion Picture Association threw a fit. This was during the actors' strike and the artist strike, but they came around, and right now there's a federal version of this called the No Fakes Act, which may be the only music bill that passes this year. And they're the biggest champions. So we work our opponents, and that's a trick too. If we all support it, you got a chance, and a good chance. If we don't, one senator can put a stop to a bill. One senator. And that's just wrong. Now, having said that, we passed the Elvis Act. And 24, 25, these songs are frighteningly good, unbelievably good. I mean, like competitive.
And charting.
And charting. So my biggest, and I mentioned this before, one of the hardest things for me is when you're in a congressional office, whether it's the staff or the congressman, you might have a 15-minute appointment. You got 3 minutes where they go, now what? And you better roll the problem out there and a solution that can resonate with them in a way they'll remember instantly.
Kind of like songwriting.
Well, songwriters did that. Lee Miller appoints a task force, and we quickly come up with the 4 Ps. Permission. It's not fair use. You can't use copyrighted material to train without the permission of the copyright owner. Payment. If I give you permission, I negotiate the payment. If I don't like it, permission goes away. Proof. You've got to have proof. There's different bills that send a list to the Copyright Office you can access, give us subpoena power, or even require AI services to watermark everything. Probably going to need all 3. And remember the Elvis Act? Penalties. If we've got to go to federal court, and this is copyright infringement every time, we've done nothing. We want to go to local civil courts, or we want an AI-only pathway in federal courts that's cost-effective and gets done quickly. Permission, payment, proof, and penalty. And everybody's using it now. So we set about trying to get those in bills, and we got every one of them, not in the same piece of legislation, but different pieces of legislation. Fast forward, here's news, breaking news. 1 month ago, Tennessee Senator Blackburn, and by the way, all these bills were bipartisan, Republicans and Democratic sponsors, introduces the Trump AI Act. She puts stuff the administration wants, taking care of kids, let's get rid of the porn, some other things, but she includes the AI Accountability Act. Have y'all talked about fair use?
Not
Fair use is a doctrine in the copyright law that says this. Your song, give me one of your song titles you've written.
He wants out.
He wants out. Well, I can use that free on the news. What's your name?
Trevor.
So if Trevor, that becomes a big hit and we do it on the news and they play it, they don't pay anything. And they shouldn't have to. It's the news. If Bill Maher doesn't like you and he wants to do comedy or parody on it, that's fair use. Some educational use, but you can't start sending out copies of the song to every student that's ever been here or lyric sheets. It's limited, but that should be free. And there's a few others, but nowhere in the fair use doctrine does it say commercial applicability. And that's the whole game. If you really want to boil it down, 2 words, fair use. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. The streaming services have flip-flopped back and forth, but they've taken, in legislative parlance, the position they can use it. Because somewhere in there, it also outlines transformative works. That's not what that means, in my opinion. If you look at the history of it, if you look at the applicability of it, it's not to take a human thing, every song ever written, scrape the internet illegally, and transform it into a machine doing something a human's supposed to do. So the AI Accountability Act says it's not fair use, and here's penalties for it.
Mm-hmm.
Copied Act and Train Act, and a new one called the Clear Act, deal with the proof aspects. And in the Copied Act, we've got the penalty aspect. And the federal Elvis Act, the No Fakes Act, that's all part of this bill that we thought the administration had agreed to. Until 2 days later, they said, no legislation. We want the courts to determine it, which we don't want. Are the courts influenced by an administration? That's a question that we should ask. So right now, our goal, and there have been some policy changes in the White House that we like, is to fight that fight. And we'll go from there. Now, here's the good news. You asked me about private deals. Every major publisher and some lesser than major publishers have made some kinds of deals with different AI softwares. The best one I'm read into, and I'm under an NDA a little bit, a self-imposed one, is Universal's deal with Udio.
Mm-hmm.
It's phenomenal. It's better than I would have forgotten parts of this. It's phenomenal. When you sign a publishing deal, you don't get to decide the permission. The publisher does. You've given them total administrative control. They're going back to the writers and artists and asking them again every so often. It's phenomenal. There's different payment mechanisms depending on the use. But here's the problem with all of it. That's one company and one AI company, one music company and AI. You two ever write together?
Yeah.
Okay. You're at Universal. He's not. The deal only covers you. So how good is it?
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you the best part of it. All these deals with all the publishers and companies tend to become something we call most favored nations. So I'm hoping in 4 or 5 years, all the best parts of these deals are aggregated
Into a
Now, they are not saying, they're saying this doesn't amount to us saying it is or isn't fair use. I don't care if we can accomplish those 4 Ps in the marketplace. And I go back to that. The marketplace is doing something that I wish the government was doing. Last part of all this, and we win all of this. England's trying to give it away. Germany is schizophrenic. This is going to go on to your kids, so you're my age, because it's one country at a time, and it's going to change as the technology changes. I will say this one. You were at the front of the piracy fights. We had tape copying, piracy, streaming rates. And piracy, by the way, is still a big problem.
Yeah.
We have been, the whole industry, and I'm thinking, and I will say particularly my organization, more out in front of this than we've ever been on. That's where we stand. That's where it rests today.
So are you excited about the future of music? These are the next batch of creators and people who are going to be participating in that economy. Are you bullish or are you bearish?
Well, I'm going to answer it this way. Well, yet to be determined. If we lose fair use, I don't know what I've done the last 30 years. Seriously. If we win it, we're not going to have to ask the streaming companies for anything. They're going to come to us. I was deposed in a trial with Anthropic. That's a language model. It's not music. We allege, and I can tell you we're right, that they infringed music lyrics. That company's worth, if I'm right, check me on this, I was deposed in August. Today's worth more than double what it was in August. If they're smart, and I think it's 300 some odd billion dollars, they'll give up $1 billion and go on about their merry way, and we will too. So, but if there was a ruling tomorrow, it's not fair use, we're in trouble. So it depends on that.
So when I think about that, and I think about the influence of money in all those rooms, I'll go back to my question: are you bullish? I mean, do you weight that? Is that what keeps you up at night? Is thinking about yeah.
And this has changed so much. If you'd asked me 2 months ago, I'd said there's no way those 4 Ps ever get in a bill. Well, they were in some bills, in a bill that the Trump administration is looking at. This has evolved as rapidly as the technology has. So I'm goal driven. I really haven't thought about it that much.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what I will tell you. Maybe it's naivete. We're right. And that's carried me throughout 30 years of this career. We're right on fair use. We're right on the very first board meeting we had. The songwriter went, how do we make it go away? And we're like, you can't. It's here. Let's get guardrails around it that give you some say-so in what happens with your songs and payment that you decide.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I've ever told you this. I absolutely hate 85 or 90% of my job. I hate it. But the 10% is so good. And it's the music.
Yeah.
It's the young writers coming in to see us that I don't give a shit about the 85 or 90%. I had one of those days today, and I put on one of my favorite songs before I came over here. I'm ready to go. So music's always going to be here. I mean, in history, the first 2 people were a guy named Solomon and his son David singing the Psalms to God. And I just believe that somehow we figured this out. We've always figured it out with technology, but this is different. But that's a long-winded answer to say I don't think about the outcome very much, other than I think right can prevail if you're persistent. And even if we lose it for a minute, there will come an opportunity with these companies. You want to really freak out? What history shows us is AI companies probably will be record labels and publishers in the not too distant future.
Mm-hmm.
But
unpack that a little bit for pull that back a little bit.
Streaming services are becoming record labels.
Mm-hmm.
They're becoming publishers. Technology becomes part of the ecosystem. That's what I mean by it.
Well, when I think about like back in the day when and this was the pre-Napster thing when the internet first started.
And by the way, we had a chance to buy Napster. What would that have looked like? I don't mean we, but the industry.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean,
I think for $11 million, Lawson.
And it was ridiculous. And
Sean Fanning, I'm just saying, man.
And he was a music fan.
A music fan. We could have owned the technology, and it wasn't about owning Napster. It was about being out in front of it and determining our own destiny.
Yeah, and
I'm not interested. We'll try our own. That was bad.
Oh well, I mean. And that trend continued for more than a minute, right?
Oh.
Like, and it's, so when I think about this idea that, when I think about music, for me, it's the connection from the ear to the heart. And we had Osier in here last week, and Osier has got this interesting balance of, he's very pragmatic about, it's an income, it's an asset, but
he's a writer.
But he's a writer, and he also articulated this, and I thought it was really interesting that a machine cannot make me feel what a human can make me feel.
Well, it can by stealing human work.
Right. That's exactly right. So when you kind of, again, back to the
By the way, I'm a huge fan of that guy.
Oh, dude, love him.
He was the head of the small publishers for a while. We did some stuff together. Yeah. I'm a big fan of John Osier.
So the assuming fair use, assuming that right prevails, that means a much more promising future alongside this emerging technology that half of this room fucking hates.
Well,
more than half.
There's the promise of us having some control over the destiny. At the class at USC today, I also posited this, and I get there's some examples. But are we going to pay $200 on a consistent basis to go see an AI performance? Or do you want to see Lainey Wilson? Do you want to see you know, garb. I think that's going to be a challenge for AI. Now, I will also say this, that consumption is very generational. And I'm old.
Yeah. Well, so this brings up an interesting, so the idea that when I look at, even just on a small scale, one of the things we heard from John was we own these sort of large catalogs where the head of it is where most of the money's made. But when we look back into those catalogs now, we can go back to those work tapes, feed them into Suno or Udio, and get a new version that could give that, right? And the cost of bringing those forward is basically zero.
We're not against the technology. People ask us that all the time. My job is to get human creators, songwriters, those 4 Ps. But whether you use AI, don't use AI, that's not our business. Our business is to tell you this. You know what the U.S. Copyright Office says? Anybody? Any part, that much of a song that's AI cannot be copyrighted. Translation, outside of sync, you can't be paid for. Now, I'm sitting in the U.S. Copyright Office 1 month ago. I'm up there the whole time, but this time we had this many people up there. We had 14 or 15 staffers who work on music issues, all for a couple hours. And I asked one of my favorite people up there, I said, what does that mean? He goes, we have to determine on a song by song basis. I said, you are screaming for budget dollars right now. You need 3 times as many people.
Yeah.
He shrugged his shoulders. So we don't know what it means. So if you're a professional songwriter and you use it, you better be cognizant of that. Remember Tim Whipperman, the Van Warner Chapel?
Yeah.
He's doing something that I find fascinating. It's a new database called Humanable. So you go to Humanable and you say, I swear under penalty of perjury, there was no AI used in this song. The South Korean Performance Rights Society, now you can fool it. There's ways to get around it.
Sure, of course.
But if you do a direct output from most of these AI softwares, it can be detected. There's some that even claim they can tell you what songs were specifically used to create it. If they run a bot and detect that, no payment. That's where Humanable comes in. I think it's brilliant. I hope it's not too far ahead of its time. Now, is that foolproof? Are you going to go swear under penalty of perjury that you didn't use AI if you did use it? You're not going to do that.
Well, I wouldn't use it.
Well, I get it, but if you did, most people would. And you say, my co-writer didn't either. Those are the kinds of things. We're going to have to use AI to police AI more. Well,
Isn't it ironic, right?
it is.
So I want to kind of switch gears to a more
Okay.
personal. You talk about the professional songwriter. No one in here is a professional songwriter yet. But
Come see me before you make that leap. I'm serious. I want to tell you what you're getting into.
well, that's what I.
And I want to help you.
Well, and so
Who are
so-
the songwriters in here? How many? You get a free membership on me. Send me their names.
Okay.
And you're going to get with a lady named Jill Moody. That's going to be your new godsend. That's what she does. She helps you find a path to your dream. So that's on me.
Okay, cool. So will you give a little context on that transition, on that, what it is from I really want to be a songwriter to I am a songwriter? Can you?
So I'm going to pick on you for a minute. Do you know the distinction between the MLC, Sound Exchange, and GMR?
I'm unfamiliar with GMR. I know that MLC is mechanical, and I believe Sound Exchange is like
You better know every nuance of it. I have people that move here and come to be a songwriter and don't know how they get paid. You probably know more than most because of this class. So my first thing to you is understand, if you were going to be a builder, if you were going to have any other occupation, you're going to get some advanced degree in it and you're going to go out and learn how it works. It astonishes me, the people that come in and have changed their whole life and can't answer the fundamentals. So know all that. The odds are against you to make a living in the traditional music industry. Now, there's new ways to do it, which I applaud. Social media, there's a lot of other ways. Every little town, my little town, Paris, Tennessee, has 2 songwriter venues. So there's ways to do it.
Mhm.
But it's very difficult through the traditional music industry. We've got thousands and thousands of people here that want to do what you're doing. Here's the single biggest piece of advice I can give you. How good is your best song? 1 to 10.
Maybe.
Say 9.
Okay.
Okay, great. I used to tell people that gets you a token to put on the Monopoly. Right now, it gets you directions to where that lives on Amazon. They better be good. But it's the networking, it's who you meet, it's the path you follow to get between here and Warner Chapel, and it's hard. So we'll go through all that with you. I don't know if that answered your question.
It does.
but,
And I think the other thing we talk again. Here
there's
we
a
go.
lot of yous in this town. So who you surround yourself with, you got to find north, and north changes every 5 minutes. So I'll work with you on that.
The idea that you have your reputation and you have your relationships, reputation
Mhm.
Rolodex, right? And what you're talking about there is, it's almost like one of the things I hear a lot is, I never had a plan B. This is just what I was going to do. And I just found a way. But for everyone who's not got a plan B, a bunch of them need it. I mean, statistically,
And most of those people you hear that from, we're here in a different era where statistically that was possible.
Mhm.
It's awfully hard now. And I'm not saying, I would say it a different way. Be driven, be relentless, but be aware. It's tough. There will be more new starters on the Tennessee Titans this year than artists and songwriters you ever hear about again. It's tough.
And what's changed? Why has it is it gotten tougher, or is it
The
gotten
biggest
easier?
single change for all of y'all in the traditional music industry was the end of physical product.
Mhm.
By my count, people argue this with me. When I came here in 1997, here's the dominant fact. We had 42 record companies. I don't mean labels. I don't mean Sony
Mhm.
is one, but they were one, not Republic and
Yeah.
Arista and all this. 42 record companies getting activity on charts. Remember Giant? Remember Broken Bow? Remember
Yeah,
all
all
these
of them,
things? Songs stayed on the charts 3 to 4 months and made the same amount of money they do now. It was easy for a songwriter of any note to get 5, 10, 15, 20 album cuts. It was like an 18-month cycle. I put out an album, I do 3 or 4 singles, new album in 18 months. And you could make thousands and thousands of dollars on album cuts through physical sales. As that declined, there were fewer opportunities for that. Songs now stay on the chart a year. Back then, number 20 or 30 in country paid decent money.
Mhm.
Syndicated radio plays 6 or 7 songs. If you're not in the top 10, you should see the difference in the money in number 20, number 10, 5, and 1. It's unbelievable, the difference. So this many opportunities is that many now. Another thing was when I first took this job, it was a town of pitching songs.
Mhm.
And most of the publishing deals weren't for artist writers. A lot of writers didn't even write their own songs. They were for non-artist writers. My estimation, and you can back it up somewhat statistically, is probably 60%, if not more, of the songs are written with the artist or in their camp. Morgan Wallen writes it with the same 5 or 6 guys. It's all millionaires. But if you don't get in that camp,
You ain't getting a cut.
I'm talking about getting in the Morgan
Yeah,
Wallen
yeah,
tribe.
yeah.
Then, Morgan's not going to take pitch songs. So the days of, here's the best song, let me present it to alter the artist. That still happens, but it's a dwindling methodology.
And how does it vary when you think about the Nashville experience versus the LA experience versus the New York experience? They're different. The systems work.
New
to some
York
degree
really is
differently.
more of a service station these days. I'm not saying they don't sign artists, but most of the activity in the traditional music industries in Nashville or LA.
Mhm.
And we're becoming LA. It was tribes like this 10 years ago. And, you know, it's different. Pop music pays way more.
Mhm.
Instead of your publisher doing everything for you, if you're just a songwriter, you might have a manager. And you tend to go through producers out there more than you
Mhm.
do. But it's becoming sort of the same.
And do you see the melding? So some of you hands who are engineers. So we have some engineers and then hands who are producers. So you've got this new dynamic, and then you have the way that the systems have. When you think about the technology curve and the steepness of, you know, back in the day when we owned Tom T. Hall's old room, and we had the Mitsu X850s and I mean, we were in the same rooms seeing that all of this equipment, and it's all now sitting in here.
Well, that's a damn good question. And I think it's illustrative of how quickly this changes.
Mm-hmm.
2 years ago, certainly 3, I'd say you have a huge advantage. You're a track guy or girl,
Mm-hmm.
because the artist wants to leave that room, something they can take on the bus and either finish it or determine what they're going to do. Ain't no track guides anymore. Nobody's signing them. It's called Suno. So I don't know if that answered your question, but it's awfully tough the way this is evolving.
Hmm.
I do believe this. Within the format that is being consumed, I still think great songs win. And we went through a period where that wasn't true because the whole bro country thing was more based on record labels getting a portion of live concerts, and 70% of the fan base being females that were a whole lot more worried about what the person looked like and the drunk truck song. I am very proud, though, right now, there's some great songs.
Mm-hmm.
I've followed. Ella Langley just had a 6-week #1 this week, still on the pop charts. It's not an accident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, great. I mean, to me, great songs find their way
I agree with
Right.
that, Mark.
somehow. All right.
Especially ones that make us feel something.
Other questions?
I don't know how
Go,
much
Matt.
bearing this has on your position right now, but do you guys have like any specific thoughts about the like Live Nation Ticketmaster lawsuit results today?
Well,
Nice.
Yeah, they rolled in some legal.
we're not involved. We're not involved in that.
Yeah,
but
that's another side of the house in a way.
it
right?
is, and we're working with the new Live Nation venue called The Truth because it's based on songwriters and songwriter friendly. Look, here's the way I'd answer it. I saw Led Zeppelin for $12. The whole thing's out of control. You shouldn't be able to have to go take a bank loan to take you and 4 kids to a show. And we own the Bluebird Cafe. We've got a lot of ticketing issues over there. I don't know if that answered your questions, and I'm being somewhat diplomatic because we don't directly fight that fight. But if you want music to be consumed, let's make it somewhat affordable.
Other questions? Randall.
There's so many incarnations of what AI is doing or might do in the future. One thing that seems to be in practice, if I'm on Spotify and I search for an AI song, what I have come across is an existing song in an existing genre that is recreated in a new genre. And I'm just wondering, what are the copyrights there? Are the original songwriters paid as
If you're talking about a cover version of it,
yeah,
if the original songwriters aren't listed, it's copyright infringement. We take it down. I don't know if that answered your question, but I will tell you some breaking news. Guess what's happened in the last few weeks? There's now a new performing rights society for AI songs only. AIM Pro. I think they're going to focus on the sync market. I don't know a lot about them. I do know one of the major publishers met with them and basically told me, like, they're going for it, try to stop us. On the MLC board, fraud's a problem. Now, we detected the biggest fraud case in American history that we've identified. A guy had never written a song, then it's a few hundred, then it's a few thousand, then it's 6 figures. How do you write 100,000 songs in your lifetime?
You can't.
And he employed some Confederates to figure out a way to get multiple family streaming accounts and just to the tune of Apple and Spotify losing about $10 million. We found it out, the MLC, starting with anomalous activity. And then we've got some sophisticated software that we've offered really to all the collection agencies. But it's a problem. And it's going to get worse. And some of it, I don't know how you're ever going to detect unless you really do a song by song thing and go back to the origin. I will tell you this, Apple did something we applaud very recently. If your song's fully AI, not a hybrid, but if it's all AI, you've got to tell them at the point of ingress, or they have a lot of rights to take it off the platform. I'm going to suggest civil penalties for that. What's wrong with saying this is AI when you put it on there? It ought to be a requirement.
Other songs on today on Spotify.
Well, first of all, I don't have Spotify. Google my name in Spotify. I have Apple Music, who, by the way, is by far the most friendly streaming company to create.
So I use Apple Music then as the platform. Are there songs that are played on Apple Music where there is no royalty being paid to creators?
Well, if they're AI only, they're not going to get a performance royalty or a mechanical. But I'm sure that there's fraud on there where they are. I mean, that we just found $10 million worth from one guy. They didn't find it. We found it.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question? Yeah. And I honestly, that's one of the things that keeps me up at night, because that $10 million came out of human beings' pockets. Now, the MLC didn't pay any of it, but it's a formulaic thing where plays divided by the number of humans, and that's the royalties for that period of time. Yeah.
You talked earlier, you made a statement that I hung on to. You were like, well, now it's different because of the way things used to work when you're talking about how it works on Capitol Hill.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You were talking about bipartisan agreement on bills and whatnot.
He's saying there's still bipartisan agreement, though.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
saying music is about the only thing. It's just become way more divisive. I credit a lot of that to MSNBC, C-SPAN, Fox News, and people entrenched. But I'm not sure I remember what I referenced myself.
in general, in terms of how the government.
Well,
functions.
it's just the whole thing over the past decade or two has just gotten. There's a tunnel between all the House office buildings and the Senate office buildings, and you walk over to the Capitol. A buzzer goes off. And you've literally got 15 minutes, sometimes 5, on most votes, to get up from your congressional office, go put your card in the machine and vote. And when I worked, Tennessee had Democrats and Republicans, and we'd go over there together. Literally. Left walks on the left side, and the right walks on the right side. And even if you're from the same state, they don't speak to each other. That's wrong.
This is where Bill Maher talks about he's equally on neither side, right? Like,
Well, the system needs some fixes.
Yeah.
I was never for term limits, and I'm getting way out, whatever, because Tennessee did well to have members like Jim Sasser and others, Quillen, gain seniority. I'm not so sure I feel that way personally.
Other questions?
You know what? What's your last name?
Diaz Rivera.
Congressman Diaz, right here. I'm gonna, you can
Yeah.
talk to me. No, Congressman. All right. She said no. She's vetoed it. You don't have a running mate, so.
I'll run against him.
Look at that.
They date.
Go.
My understanding is that the PRO's BMI, they will accept, as long as it's, more human than not, they will accept outputs that are, or at least that you're using AI to help you write. And I understand that it's been in mastering software, it's been a lot of places, but this is a completely different animal. At what point Can catalogs hold their value if there's almost an unlimited supply of things being?
Well,
In the PROs, but I understand they're gonna watch you guys.
the unlimited supply, look, radio's a monster. It still is.
Mhm.
And they're not playing a lot of AI music. Streaming services may play some, but a lot of it's not being monetized. And I think that's a very perceptive question. What does that look like 10 years from now? I don't see in the short-term future that gets disrupted much just because there's a volume of songs. Somebody told me today at USC, the Andre Alexander that teaches the classes, Sino outputs 7 million songs a day. Now, they're not necessarily creating, a lot of those are demos. Streaming and radio is based in part, it's a complicated formula how those licenses happen based on consumption. So right now, Ella Langley's getting hundreds of millions of listens, and I don't know if AI is. So that's where the payment comes in. It's a volume exercise.
Yeah.
What they do, streaming services, people go, what's the rate? I got in the biggest argument with the Wall Street Journal, and we didn't talk for a while. Well, there's a rate. There was a rate for the last reporting period. What do you mean? There's different formulas, but essentially they work. This is really complicated. There used to be 3 or 4, now there's 2. But here's the general foundational idea. Let's take Spotify for this reporting. I don't know if they pay monthly or quarterly, whatever it is. Let's say monthly. And there's 24 billion streams or whatever it is. And they take the amount of money collected from the consumers that they have to pay for us. So whatever the rate is, divided by that number of plays. What if that's in half next month? What if it goes up? The only correct data, now you can essentially predict a range for it, but the exact rate was what you got paid last. You understand what I'm saying? Here's $1. We divide it by everybody that walks in the room. There's 25 people, everybody gets 4 cents. Next quarter, there's 100 people, you all get a penny, and that's the way it works, essentially. Any more questions? I want to know more about this political campaign over here.
Yeah, well, so
So how does the government work?
Huh?
How does the government?
How does the government work? Look, I'm going to say this. With all the craziness, I still think it's the best form in the world, but it needs some recalibration for sure.
Yeah.
So
So
I mean, on both sides.
So I've got a final question because
All
I
right.
think they're done, and this is the one I ask everybody on their way out the door. If you when you think about what you know, when you think about all these things that you've learned and all these skills you've stacked, if you could go back to your 20-year-old self and offer yourself a piece of advice to not shortcut, but to maybe not have some of the hard lessons you've had to have, what would it be? What would the advice you
Well,
give
mine
yourself
is not professional, it's personal. I would have understood a better balance in my professional and personal life.
Hmm.
It was always, I was always professionally driven, and there's a cost to that.
Mhm.
That's what I would have done.
Yeah. So more
I would have
balance.
balanced it, and I would have been more proactively cognizant of that. I was always there. And truth of the matter was, I've got very fortunate in the 3 or 4 careers I have, they were my drug. I loved every minute of it,
Mhm.
but it cost
But
me
you
personally.
also said you hated about 85%.
Well, but I loved it so much. I mean, music, man, all the bullshit y'all have to go through till you're on that stage, and then ain't it worth it? Just saying.
Thank you.
Really
brother.
enjoyed it.
Really
You're a
appreciate
great
it.
interviewer, man.